Hello, everybody. I'm Farzan Ahmed, the Executive Director of the Ohio Turnpike. I'm also the Chair of the IBTTA Task Force on Global Road Safety. Last year, we commemorated our first Global Road Safety Week, and we worked together with partners from within the US who are members of IBTTA and many of our European partners. And we talked about the importance of road safety and how this is a message that we need to communicate because we have the same goal: zero deaths on the highways. Last year's theme was Be Safe Together. The whole idea is that one day when we get to that vision, we can only get there if all of us are working together across industries, across jurisdictions, because it's a responsibility of all of us to keep each other and ourselves safe. This year's theme is to be the highway hero. A highway hero is someone who takes deliberate and intentional action to be safe when they get behind the wheel, safe for themselves and their families and for everybody else. My guest today is a highway hero. He has been in law enforcement for a long time, and he's a first responder. He knows things that we read about and that we see occasionally when it comes to road safety, and unfortunately when it comes to crashes. Staff Lieutenant Rick Reeder of the Ohio State Highway Patrol, welcome to Global Road Safety Week with IBTTA.
Good morning, Executive Director. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about traffic safety.
And I know that we learn a lot from you and from your perspective as a first responder and as a law enforcement officer. Staff Lieutenant, I want to ask you first, how'd you get in this line of business? What made you become an officer of the law? And then your journey that brought you to the Ohio Turnpike.
No, that's a great question, and it's a question I appreciate because I was a tiny little tyke in a small town, and the local sheriff's department, the Richland County Sheriff's Department, had jurisdiction. Our town was so small we didn't have law enforcement. And this deputy, my dad knew, and this deputy, and at the time I was a little tyke, he seemed so tall, and he's wearing this, beautiful uniform. He was intimidating to me. But he bent down to me, he took a knee, and he could have took a quarter out of his pocket, and he said, "Young man," he said, "we're here to protect you." And I was thinking, wow, this guy took time to introduce himself to me, gave me a quarter, which I thought was the greatest thing ever at that age, and said, "I'm here to protect you," and it just, grew up in a military appreciative family. My dad was, a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, and that just stuck with me through my life and career. And as I grew up through high school, I thought, I think law enforcement is something for me. And I went to Buckeye Boys State here in Ohio, and I saw the state troopers there, and I thought those guys look pretty sharp in those uniforms. And I got my college degree in criminal justice, applied for the patrol, and I've been here for 27 years now, and it's been 27 great years. Some were better than others, but great years.
How'd you end up with the Ohio Turnpike?
Well, my mentor, he broke in on the Turnpike back in 1977. He came on the Highway Patrol, and he kept telling me through the years as I was a trooper, he said, "You're missing the best kept secret as a trooper. Go to the Turnpike and work. Go to the Turnpike. It's a great place to work. You have basically, in Ohio, we're a state highway patrol, so we don't really have private property jurisdiction. But on the Turnpike, you everything between those fences is yours." And this, he was right. It's been a great experience. I've been on the Ohio Turnpike as a sergeant and a post commander, and now the liaison since 2012, I think it is. And you see everything. You deal with anything and everything that law enforcement deal with, and it's on a magnified scale because the traffic volume's up here. And it's been a good experience. What I've learned is how great it is to work with yourself and the other executive directors on the Turnpike, that from tolls to maintenance, it's just, we have a true partnership for safety up here, and it's been great. It's really been great.
Mentioned all those departments, and you're exactly right, Staff Lieutenant. It takes the entire team to work towards safety. I wouldn't talk to the people who are in the office and say just because you're in the office doesn't mean you are not part of the mission of safety. But Staff Lieutenant, I want to go back to some of the things you talked about. The uniform was impressive. That's what impressed you. And the uniform can be somewhat intimidating to some people. But from everything that you have said, you didn't get into this profession from the perspective of catching people. It seems to me that you got into this profession from the perspective of helping people. Is that right?
That is correct. I saw what law enforcement did protecting people. And as you get older, you see what they do when people are in their most vulnerable moments. No one plans on being in a traffic crash from our perspective. So I tell my troopers all the time, this may be an everyday thing to you, but to that person, it could be a life altering event. And we try to teach our people to take care of those persons, be that calm during the storm and assure them that you're there to help, everything from making sure their family members are aware of what's going on to helping them get their car towed and getting, their personal effects out of the car. Just things like that. To me, that's what it's about. To me, that thank you at the end of the day, or at times people, will go as far as, may I give you a hug because you've been so good to us. And we appreciate that stuff. That's what it's about for me.
Your share of crashes, haven't you?
Many, many of them.
What do you think is the main cause of all these crashes that you see?
Speed. It's speed. People going too fast, be it because they didn't plan ahead, be it because they had something that changed that day and they're trying to get home in a hurry. To me, it all goes back to speed and not driving in a manner that can be done safely.
You didn't even hesitate. You said speed. Now that's 27 years of professional law enforcement experience. So how about distraction? Where does distraction play into this? And in your career, tell me about what you have seen. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? What's going on out there?
From my perspective, I started in 1998. Then there was cell phones out, but not to the effect that there are now. So obviously we've seen the distracted driving from cellular devices just, evolve to the point that, on the legislative side, we've had to catch up to that evolution to put the hands-free phone device laws in effect. And that contributes to the speed. You've got a person speeding, but now that person, in addition to making a decision to speed, is somewhat distracted by a phone call or something they felt that was important, and it's taking their eyes off the road. People watch movies now in their cars. I wouldn't have thought that would have been possible in 1998 when I started, but that's a reality now. The multitude of things that distract people now is something that law enforcement, in the legislative side, we're catching up to. We're doing a better job.
So when somebody is driving down the road, watching a movie in their vehicle, how are you going to handle that? Because when they're doing that, they're putting themselves at risk. But what about all the innocent people around them who are trying to do the right thing and being safe? All of them are being put at the risk. How do you handle that? Is that an enforcement issue or is that an education issue?
I think it's both. The Ohio State Highway Patrol, we're known for our strict but fair enforcement efforts. We go out, we try to make a difference through that strict and fair enforcement. We also try our best, and again, I go back to our partnership with the Ohio Turnpike and Infrastructure Commission. We do a very strong education side too. But back to what you're saying, the trooper would develop probable cause and stop that vehicle. I don't want to get deep into the weeds, but that video playing, that's something you question them about. And a lot of times what I found in my career is when you talk to a person about what they're doing, it gives them a different perspective. Like I go back to when the move over, slow down law was put into effect about 10 years ago or whenever it was. I would tell these people, like, what if that were you there with the flat tire? Wouldn't you want those people to slow down and move over? And they kind of get that look in their eye, like, you're right. And distracted driving is the same thing. I think people have become so accustomed with doing what they do. They don't think about the consequences or what that other person, the risk they're providing or making for other people on the roadway. And there's a lot out there, but again, I go back to the fact that we try to do very strict but fair enforcement. And when Ohio enacted, the cell phone, or I should say the hands-free, distracted driving laws, we've took upon us to be the state leader in enforcing that and educating people on that. And we'll continue to do that.
What are some of the highest speeds that you have seen on the Ohio Turnpike? And is it just vehicles or do you see commercials as well?
We get some crazy speeds. I personally have had cars up into the 130 mile per hour area, sports cars. We had a uh, uh, a group of high end vehicles, like Ferraris, Bentleys. There was a rally of some sort that came across, and we were getting crazy speeds out of that, like in the, again, in excess of that 130 mile per hour range. But what we found historically for us is we would work with our airplanes to do an aerial enforcement efforts. What we've done, the maintenance department, the Ohio Turnpike, has done a great job. They'll paint our air zones every quarter mile increments, and those have to be engineered and done precisely so that we can take, enforcement efforts on that. But through those air enforcement efforts, and again, we put signs up saying, you're entering an aerial enforcement area. We advertise the fact that planes are up, but through those, what we found is the commercials. The executive director and I spoke a couple of years ago. We had a commercial tanker, a hazardous placard tanker, at almost 90 miles per hour. 80,000 pounds at 80, and almost 90 miles per hour. And typically truck drivers will talk. They'll talk to one another and say, "There's a trooper here, there's a trooper there." And we don't get those extreme speeds. And those are the ones that we really want to target. And those are the ones that we appreciate the plane calling those off. And we find that with the plane, we do get those speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour quite frequently. And unfortunately, we do get those commercial haulers in excess of 90. I won't say as frequently, but unfortunately to me, it's a higher volume that I would like to think is out there.
It's alarming because these are professional drivers and you'd expect better from a professional driver. Staff Lieutenant, let's talk about enforcement. That's an important part of what you do and what we all have to do to keep people safe. So let's go back to that person that we talked about a couple of years ago, the commercial, 80,000 pound commercial carrying hazardous material. How do you educate somebody like that? How do you educate them that it's not right to go through construction zones and normal regular highways at 90 miles an hour carrying hazardous load?
Those people are making those decisions. That's a decision that professional driver made to do that. And this is where I'm a proponent of that strict but fair enforcement, because there has to be some sort of punitive side to that. We can have a conversation with that person, but frankly, he knows he can't go that fast. So I think that's where that enforcement side is so important, because it almost puts that emphasis to what we did. Like, not only did you get stopped today and slowed up, but we're going to inspect your truck, we're going to inspect your logbooks, we're going to make sure everything you're doing is up to the federal motor carrier enforcement standards, but we're also going to give you a citation. And depending on the speed, you may have to mandatory appear in court, which means they're going to have to take time out of their day to come back to do it. And to me, that's how you gain that compliance, because you have to alter what they may or may not be doing on a daily basis. So again, I think that the enforcement is very important, and that we need to continue being advocates for the enforcement, strictly but fairly, to try and curb those driving behaviors. We talk about that a lot, curbing driving behaviors, and that enforcement level is a strong help in doing that.
There's a fine line between teaching someone that what they're doing is wrong, and then teaching someone a lesson because they are taking those intentional steps that make everybody unsafe. Remember a few months ago, I was looking from my office window and I saw you standing on the side of the road with stop sticks, and you were actually trying to stop a Charger, a Hellcat or something. Tell me about that one. What was going on there?
Yeah, there's many of these high-end Chargers and Hellcats. There's issues with how they're being stolen in many cases, and I don't remember if this one in particular was stolen, but either way, these are vehicles with excess of 700 horsepower. We're talking like NASCAR race car type horsepower that travel extreme speeds. And that day I was set up, we try to find a safe area. And to me, I found that safe area in front of the admin building because there was a guardrail and some other stuff that I could deploy these sticks safely, because it's very dangerous. You're literally standing out there on the road. You throw these stop sticks across the street, and then we try to deploy them in front of the vehicle's, tires. That what they do is they deflate the tires at a slow pace hoping that the driver will then pull to the side of the road. So yeah, that morning we had a pursuit. It had done a couple of U-turns on the turnpike, illegal crossover cuts, and I had set up right by the admin building, but unfortunately it had exited right before it got up to where I was. But yeah, that was my goal that day, to safely stop the pursuit, because we have to make a decision: is the risk versus the reward of stopping them, because these vehicles in particular, we've had them in excess of 160 miles per hour. Our patrol cars won't go that fast, nor do I want them to go that fast personally. So we have to look at other means to stop them. And that's where we have aviation, again, to follow those vehicles. But many times aviation may not be available, such as that morning when you stopped out and we talked. So I go back to, some of these pursuits are so dangerous, we will simply terminate, because it's not worth risking the safety of the other patrons on the Ohio Turnpike to catch this car that's traveling at 160 plus miles per hour.
Yeah, it's not just that vehicle, but like you said, you were on the side of the road with a car going by at 140 or more. Dangers to law enforcement, And I wanted to ask you about this because I wanted people to understand that when somebody is taking those intentional steps, intentional behaviors to go fast in excess of 120, 130 miles an hour, they're putting themselves at risk, others at risk. They're also putting people like you at risk, who are spending your time trying to keep the rest of us safe. There's real danger to first responders out there, isn't there?
Oh, it's more so. I would say it's worse now than it was when I started in 1998. And again, you go back to what we spoke of earlier, Executive Director. It's that distraction. Many people use different apps on their phones that have traffic information, and many of those will say, law enforcement ahead, or I think one of them says speed check ahead or something like that, which I'm happy that's in there, because that usually that will slow people down, which that's our goal. Our goal is high visibility enforcement to reduce, those driving behaviors that cause crashes. And you're right. Every single stop you make, we can be sideswiped, we can be hit. People won't pull over right away, and they'll drive into a construction zone. And now I've created a substantial risk to all those maintenance and construction workers that are there in a closed portion of the roadway, because this driver wouldn't stop when we needed him to. So the risk is substantial for everyone out there on the road, anyone that's out of their vehicle. And obviously we have to get out of our vehicle to make contact with those drivers.
We've talked about a lot of different things. We've talked about distracted driving. We've talked about speed. We've talked about enforcement, education. One of the things that we do when it comes to education is we have those customer service events every summer at our service plazas, and the highway patrol is always there, and they interact with customers. What is the value of interacting with people like that?
That value is priceless in my book. I tell my troopers all the time, I probably wouldn't be where I was had that deputy not taken that moment to talk to me on a human level, on a personal level. And I tell my troopers the same thing. Talk to kids, because kids nowadays need to know that you're there. If they're lost, they can come to you and get help. If there's something else wrong, come to you and get help. I always say, don't be a robot, be a person and talk to people, because we want them to know that we're not just that state trooper in Ohio that's out looking for speeders. We're also people that have families, we have friends, and we want the roads to be safer. And those plaza events, we've used them as recruitment, so it's helped us, because the last 5 years, our numbers have dwindled because of retirements and other, social or society issues. It's been tough to recruit. So, we appreciate the Turnpike Commission for having those events, because it gives us a recruitment time. I can't put a number on how many people we've gotten, but I can tell you that we've talked to many, and we've had them apply and at least look at our website and follow up with us. So, as far as talking to people, making it a personal thing, and recruitment, you can't beat it. It's a great thing. And the other side of it, we don't talk so much about, is usually it's in the summer and it's air conditioned in there. So you get a little bit of break from the heat too. So it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. And we've got some planned this year. I know we've had one already, and I just sent an email today. We're going to do another one with the Corvette we have, and that's an attention getter. So we'll be out at the plaza here next week.
That Corvette was confiscated from a drunk driver, from what I understand, correct?
Yeah, that Corvette in particular, this gentleman had numerous previous convictions of driving under the influence. And actually, the night that we had contact with him, he had actually, I don't know if he drove the car down a set of railroad tracks, but my understanding is that that Corvette had been hit by a train. So we did a crash report, handled that investigation. He subsequently had to forfeit that vehicle to the state of Ohio, no expense to the taxpayers, because of all of his felony driving offenses for OVI. He had fallen into that category. So we as a division decided that's a great recruitment tool because it's an attention getter. So we had it fixed. We put our markings on it, and it really does. I mean, executive director, you've been at the events. People love that Corvette, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's got highway patrol lighting and marking on it. So it's helped us for recruitment. It's helped us to push that traffic safety message on that education side.
What's the worst part of your job?
By far, knocking on people's door to notify them their loved one is dead from a traffic crash. It's the hardest thing we do. I've had family members, hit me because they call me a liar, and I just grab that person and tried to hug them and say, I know you're in pain. We have many chaplains now assigned to the division. We try to take chaplains with us when we can, but unfortunately, many times you can't. But by far, I think any trooper would tell you that heartbreak that we have to deliver to persons is that fatal notification.
We talk about traffic safety, individually in our organizations, and then through IBTTA, through our Global Road Safety Week. This is what we're trying to prevent, right? This is our goal is zero. But you've talked about all these behaviors that people are doing. What's it going to take for us to get there, Rick? What do we need to do together?
I think we continue on our current course. I mean, I think that we as the division stick with that firm but fair enforcement. I go back to my interactions with your departments, the engineering, tolls, everyone that we work with and have meetings on a weekly basis. We're constantly evolving to what's coming. You go back to last year, we decided before the Thanksgiving holiday travel period that, we, at your request, we thought, hey, that's probably a good idea to get some extra troopers around those new toll plazas. And it worked. It brought those crash numbers down. I think it's something that you always have to be open to change and look at things through data and statistics. And obviously being part of the IBTTA, you get, you get data, intelligence data, we call it, from other countries as well. I mean, this is all great stuff that if we can incorporate something here, I think we do it. You think about some of those roadways in Europe that are so safe, and what can we do to mimic what they're doing that's successful? We look at other states, what their laws are. Can we integrate a law of some sort to help us in our efforts? Ohio, like I said earlier, it was just a couple of years ago we did our distracted driving law. We were a little slow to the plate on that, but historically we gather and we try to do it right. And I think we rolled out our distracted driving law in an effective way. We did the educational side leading up to that enforcement side, and then we took it another step of giving 6 months of warnings before we drew the line and start writing tickets. But and I know that's a long drawn out question or answer to your question, but I think you have to be open to anything, and you have to be open to engineering thoughts, and you have to be open to data and statistics. That what's a hot spot to go work. Traffic data, what volumes are heavy on what days, what time frames. I mean, we try to look at everything statistically as we gather those stats. But yeah, I mean, our goal in Ohio is unfortunately, our goal is below 1,000 deaths per year, traffic deaths. And, we've kind of ebbed and flowed like any state does. But, our goal is to get below that 1,000 like we did in the early, I think it might have been the early 2000s or mid 2000s. We were there. But ultimately, that's what we look at, how many fatal crashes. That's the gauge on what we want, saving lives, because that's our goal.
Technology, data, you said data, technology. You talked about education leading to enforcement. All of these things come together, and all of us are in this together to keep ourselves, our families, and everybody else on the road safe, because that is our goal. Staff Lieutenant, thank you for your service. Thank you to your father for his service to our country. Thank you for everything that you and all of your troopers do every day on the Ohio Turnpike and on the rest of roads in Ohio, and also all of your colleagues in other states And the law enforcement officers that our partners in Europe, who are also members of IBTTA, they work very closely with their law enforcement partners too. I want to stress the importance that law enforcement plays in our mission to keep people safe. And I appreciate you joining us today. And you are indeed one of those highway heroes. I've seen your work, and you and your colleagues, and we'll stay with it. We're gonna stay with data, with education, enforcement, engineering, design, all of the things to keep us safe, because our goal is indeed Vision Zero. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And if I could, I want to conclude my part with I didn't realize the stuff we just talked about. I didn't realize the effect it was, or how great it can be, until I came to the Turnpike and I got to sit in on your meetings as the executive director, and we talk about the engineering side and the construction side. And I tell you, I think we have a format or a roadmap of success that, just the communication side. And to me, that's what the difference is. What makes our relationship so great is the complete sharing of information, and the fact that every one of those directors, I mean, we'll have a critical incident and we'll all be on the phone together. The accessibility and the decision making is really, it's the best here at the Turnpike. And on behalf of the State Patrol, I thank you for the partnership.